Okay, and welcome back. So we're just talking about the economic cycle and how it connects to the Great Depression. So we just finished going through this interactive on the different terminologies with an economic cycle. Okay, so we're always thinking about cause and consequence. So what was the cause and what's the consequence of certain things? And you'll find that they are often tied together with multiple things, which we'll talk about in a few activities anyways. But we want to look at what the most significant cause is. And we had talked about the most immediate cause, which is the stock market crash. But there are definitely some underlying causes. So what caused the stock market to crash and have such an impact? So right now, if the stock market crashes, will it have as big an impact on us as it did in the 30s? And hopefully we have learned our lesson. It definitely affects us for sure, but whether or not it affects people on an individual basis so much is the question. So they talk about a video here. So there's a video that we can watch. It's very, very short, and it's looking at what the causes are during this time. So I'm just going to try it out to see if it actually works. Okay, so it gave some pieces in that video, and we're going to talk about them throughout. So there is a click and drag activity that you can go and try out. So it's essentially which of these, what is the effect or the consequence of these causes? Okay, so that's for you to do. And then to summarize some of the details plus a little bit more, I created this kind of organizer for you to break them down so that you can see some of the differences. So in terms of economic causes, we had an overproduction of consumer, so those are products you can buy, and agriculture. So that was food like corn, particularly. Canada was very focused on corn. And then companies had expanded so much. So they were opening other businesses all over the place. And that's a really good sign of a good economy, except for when it doesn't plan for what's happening in the future. So if everyone is buying a car, and if everyone is buying a radio, and if everyone is buying an electric stove and a fridge, and we didn't have microwaves then, we start to get into TVs, that type of thing, then eventually everyone's going to have these things and they don't need to buy any more. On top of that, we're going to run into an economic crisis where we talk about the immediate cause of Black Tuesday, which is the stock market crash due to buying on credit. And so people are borrowing money to buy stocks, but say they're buying it at $1. So they pay for it at $1, but then that company isn't worth as much anymore because, say, everyone has a car and no one's buying any more cars. And so then people are trying to sell that stock that they paid for $1, and eventually on Black Tuesday, they all started selling, but no one was buying. So anyone who did buy bought that stock for 5 cents instead of $1. So the person who invested $1 and sold it at 5 cents lost 95 cents plus that product itself. And so this happened if someone bought a car and they paid, I don't know, $200 for this car. That's roughly, I think, what cars were worth at the time. They paid $200 for the car, and then all of a sudden they can't make their payments on the car anymore because they lost their job, or the car company says, you know what, we can't afford to loan this car to you anymore. You need to pay out the balance, or we'll take the car away. And so then what happened is the banks or the companies would take their products back, but people still owed for the products. So maybe they had only paid $20 off the car, so they still owed $180, but now they also don't have the car. The car was taken away, or they're trying to sell the car to pay the company that they owe $180 to. So it's funny to think about selling the product in order to pay the company back for that product. But the truth is, no one was buying cars, no one was buying the extra radios that you had, no one was buying the stoves, because again, there was no one out there to buy it from you. So it's this concept of, you now have all this stuff, but the banks are saying you need to pay them off, but you can't because you don't have the money. And then on top of that, you think, okay, well, maybe I can sell it and make some money, but now they're not worth as much. So that car that you paid $200 for, no one can afford to buy it. So someone offers you $20, you've lost money. Okay. And so even if you do sell it and make $20, you still have to find that $180 somewhere. Canada's dependency on a few resources. So even though we have a ton of resources, a ton, we have so many. We're so fortunate where we live in Canada, but we have a very bad history of mismanaging these resources, such as our water, our forestry, our fisheries, our fuel or natural gas, our minerals, anything else. Oh yeah, pretty much all of them. But at this time, Canada was so focused on just a few. And I believe they were wood, so the pulp and paper industry, where we cut down all of our trees. And we were very focused on our agriculture, specifically around corn. And so we told everyone to grow corn, grow corn, grow corn, grow corn, grow corn. But there was no one to buy it anymore. So the European countries, they couldn't afford to buy it from us. The US was really focused on building their own country. So they weren't interested in trade. They were interested in building their own. So rather than buy products from other countries, they were going to build their own industry and make them themselves or grow them themselves. So Canada, who had originally started to boom because they were selling products around the world, now the world didn't need their products or couldn't afford them. We talked about buying too much on credit. This truthfully has not changed at all. We are all very focused on credit. The difference is now that credit system is very much governmentally regulated. So I believe, I don't know what the number is for this year, but I do recall maybe 2 years ago, for every dollar a Canadian person made, so you go out and you work and you make $1, you owe $1.68 for something. So you're never making headway because you're always buying more than you're making. And an example of this is a house. Prior to the 20s, you did not buy a house if you did not have the cash to pay for the house. Like the entire house, not just a down payment, like the entire house. You did not get a house. And nowadays, you just need a down payment. And they have upped the price or the percentage that you need to have for a down payment because they were finding people were buying too big of a house and they couldn't afford to pay for it. A little bit more on that later. But this concept that we're always buying stuff on credit cards. We're always, I'll give an example in my own house. We bought a couch, but we bought it on like don't pay anything for 2.5 years or something like that. So that's buying on credit. Now, as long as we paid the couch off within the 2.5 years, we didn't pay any interest. So it's a smart buying on credit. But if we didn't pay it off, then they would charge us all the interest for those 2.5 years. So there's kind of like a tricky part in there. Cars. Most people do not walk in and pay for a car in cash. They buy it on credit by financing with an interest rate. We have lines of credit where we borrow money to do home improvement projects or to buy things that we need. We buy things on our credit card, so that's money we don't have that we're using. So this concept of buying on credit is very much in our lifestyle now. And it came out of the 20s and 30s. So what happened at this time is that everyone bought on credit. It was very new. It wasn't regulated. And then when things started to go south, it's like the bank saying to us right now, okay, we're no longer going to give you a mortgage for your house. You need to pay for your house, your car, your couch. And we're taking your credit cards away. So to be all of a sudden given a bill of let's say we owe $250,000 right now, including our house. I can't pay that. I cannot pay $250,000 right now. So then people ran into trouble. So if that were to happen today, we would be in trouble for sure, but we have a little bit more regulation on it. High tariffs or taxes means that Europeans and Americans are not buying Canadian products. So we were charging them money to buy products from us. And now they're like, listen, we can't afford that now. Canada is also dependent on the US. So if they go down, we go down. And they are the ones that kind of created the stock market crash. So when they go down because of the stock market, we go down hard, very, very hard. So our economy is very much tied to them. I'd say it still is, but less than it was before. This widening gap between the rich and the poor is a big one as well. So people who have money, and honestly, the Depression, they prospered during the Depression, whereas more people were poor. So what that happened, deflation. So things aren't worth as much when they bought them, so they owe more money after returning the products. Unemployment due to overproduction. So if we create all the corn, if we create all the cars, and they all of a sudden don't need people in the factories to create cars anymore, they all lose their jobs, which then means they can't spend their money in their community, and then those businesses close. Okay. Government charges high tariffs. We talked about that. Government has few laws controlling the economy. We talked about that. And few regulations in places over companies. We talked about that. I'm going to run out of time here. So I will come back to these in just a moment.